to have that many people from the community outside
Unquestionably,
campus.
yeah.
So that was really important. Raising the money, well, sometimes the magic works. Convincing CUSA that they should contribute money and be kind of the sponsor, the license holder, as we thought of it then, and then talking to the university about providing us money so that we could afford to build the new studios, buy the transmitter, and a placement. It was a lot of money. And
do you remember the name of the gentleman who was the development officer at the university at the time, who was so influential? He bought into our concept and was great at work in the university.
Mike Roberts.
Michael Roberts.
A really nice man.
And he was he worked the Senate. He worked the president and other deans, and he got this station something through his influence that is still to this day is so important. He got us charitable status. He was very influential in making that happen.
Right.
He's a great guy,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
He was just a great guy.
We had some allies at one point, believe it or not. They seemed to disappear in the air after a while.
This will change around 1976, 77.
In the next 20 minutes of our talk.
Well, Walther was the first chairperson of the Broadcast Policy Board, and developing the Broadcast Policy Board into a real supervising body was also important to the application, and we had a lot of university help with that too.
Yep.
And so.
Do we need to check here? Do you need to change the reels?
Apparently,
Which reel? The last reel of this vintage motion picture.
Just because we're talking about the 1970s, it doesn't mean we're using 1970s technology.
No, but I'm sorry. I actually had that thought. Do we need to change tapes at this point?
No, we just have to wake up the broadcast engineer.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan, for teching this.
Yeah, you can hit record anytime you want.
Oops.
Or stop.
I think raising the money, it was
$104,000.
$104,000.
It was 1974.
It was
and
close
did not
on a lot
CUSA lend us some money as well? I mean, was there not a
six-figure? Yeah, there was.
They kind of did, yeah. Well, they made promises about under duress. They made promises that they would.
We still had the ballot box tapes.
That they would provide money, and I think that our innovative solution to raising money on a regular basis was to be granted a commercial license so that we could raise money from businesses as well as the community groups who were using the radio station, that we would be able to raise money on a regular basis. But our promise was that it would not sound like commercials on the other radio stations. It would sound like commercials on Radio Carleton, which meant that as much creative effort would be put into the production of commercials as was put into any other of the programs. It would be considered programming. Not an interruption to programming. And Jeff Green, again, was paramount in making that thought real. I mean, he really did it. And others did too, but he was...
No, he was at the top.
And I think that brings us to the Hamilton hearing, which is the fantastic presentation that I think Greeno was probably most responsible for, where you use this wonderful metaphor about being knighted with a license. And if we were given the license but had these restrictions, it would be, as the tape said in the presentation,
but sire, you've cut off my arm.
Exactly. And I thought, I went to Hamilton. I wasn't part of the station at that point. I hadn't returned. And Christ, or Jesus. But,
Jesus Christ.
exactly. But I was so impressed by that presentation for a couple reasons. One, it really demonstrated that Radio Carleton was capable of doing these fantastical, imaginative soundscapes, and that was indicative of the type of attitude, mentality that we then applied for commercials. And the most brilliant thing I thought you guys did was you turned off the lights.
And the vice chair of the commission, remind me of his name, Boyle,
Harry Boyle.
Harry Boyle,
wonderful guy.
said right after that, that's the first time anyone's ever turned out the lights on the CRTC. And it wouldn't be the last time.
And later on, we wanted to knock the lights out. But no, I was absolutely astounded. I just thought, what brilliant person thought of this, because it focused all the members of the CRTC that was at the hearing. They couldn't talk or wander their minds. They had to concentrate
to listen
on the
to radio.
on the oral.
It's your turn, Randy. We've both used it.
Horrible joke.
Anyway,
That was June of
74.
I think it was a little earlier. I think was it
wasn't
not
it?
May? I think it was May
Yeah, I
of
think it was in May of
5.
Yeah,
'Cause-
didn't take long for them to grant us.
Well,
the,
we nagged them for months, trying to come. Hurry up! We've got an on-air date, November. We moved the date a couple of times. Did we not want to go on
Well,
Halloween?
we'll actually get to
Okay,
that.
all
But
right,
but
geez.
so what we got in actual fact
Don't
was
get ahead of the story, Craig.
what we got in actual fact was a license that said the commission authorizes.
What's the date of that?
On a this is the denial I'm reading from, because they came back and re-quoted from the approval, and they said the commission authorized on an experimental basis a limited amount of restricted commercial activity, which it defined in some detail, by the way. That, by the way, is my addition, as follows. The commission will permit simple statements which identify the sponsors of a program or the station. Such statements may incorporate the name of the sponsor, the business address, hours of business, a brief general description of the types of services and or products which the sponsor provides without reference to brand names. So there goes co-op dollars. Such statements must not contain language, and here's the killer, which attempts to promote particular services or products. For example, such statements may not refer to price, quality, convenience, durability, or desirability, or, shall I go on, or contain other comparative or competitive references. And that is a completely unworkable commercial policy.
No, it's not. It was based on the National Public Radio model in the States.
It was myopic. It was impractical. As a matter of fact, if you remember correctly, when we were granted a license, we had a fraternal sort of brother that was granted a license out of Winnipeg. I think
CKCU-FM.
Exactly. And
University of Manitoba.
Yes. And that policy killed them off.
Yeah.
Well, as I recall, we looked at their approval, and we read that, and we realized that there was no way that we could do what we were going to do and adhere to the letter of what they had stated. So,
a bit of a log rolling going on here, I think.
So what we decided to do, what we went forward with, was to produce commercials the way we said we were going to produce commercials, and wait and see what would happen.
Well, I would challenge that, because as the salesperson that was going out and selling that stuff, I never felt that we were challenging the CRTC. I thought we retrofitted our interpretation back into
our interpretation.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And I think that was the important point. But I don't think we said with a middle finger, "Screw you, CRTC."
No, that was never the
never.
No, never. Well, hardly ever. No, I think that
true.
As I look back on it, I think we knew we were walking a thin line, but We wanted them to be, if they didn't like what we were doing, we wanted them to be more clear, because we were going to produce commercials that fit into the flow of the programming, and we thought that would satisfy them.
No, we did believe that.
We didn't. We weren't trying to. We weren't trying to be deliberately obstructionist, but we did know that we were walking a line, and
we were crossing the line. We knew that.
No. I
No,
disagree
we did.
again. I do not believe that we were crossing a line. Otherwise, I would
Well,
have said, you know what we're doing here?
early on-
we're going to get denied.
Early on,
And in
we-
actual fact, when I look back on this, the commission was absolutely right in denying, because not because their policy was right, is because their understanding of what they wanted to see community and student radio was completely different from what our idea was.
They didn't want it to
And
be
was
commercial
more,
at all.
It was more self-limiting, but it was a completely impractical policy. It could not work. Nobody wants to do this out in the commercial world, for crying out loud.
No, I think we did start with the idea of trying to create programming that was a commercial, and we wanted to say, see, this is what it would sound like. See, this could actually work.
Now, the thing that the commission didn't do, but then referred to in their denial, was that those
their
bastards.
suspension.
You know
Yeah,
what? Just
their suspension. What they said was clearly, in the commission's view, this specifically. I mean, the words are just so so biting. Specifically precludes elaborate or dramatized commercial productions. We didn't see that in the original restrictions, or we thought
I don't think we did.
We'll just push it to a
didn't.
line. And matter of fact, they're going to be sort of proud of us, because they're going to
Yes.
be so
Oh,
creative.
we
That's
convinced
what we
ourselves
thought.
of that.
Yeah.
Yes, they're going to be.
They're
yeah.
going to be proud. This is going to.
Revolutionize
Well,
radio FM.
I think that going back to the original FM policy that they put out in 1973, I think we thought that it would make them realize that we were
74.
doing 74, that we were doing what they wanted.
Oh yes.
FM to be.
We were
And-
going to be a favored son.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Not the red-headed stepchild. No, that came later.
And just for folks who are listening to this, Peter, you keep referring to the denial. We'll get to that
It is
piece
coming
of
up,
history,
yes.
but because we did have a tragic moment that's coming up. But I think we should spend a little bit of time talking about that period between the hearing, the granting of the license, and then November 14th,
And
1975.
you bring me to the next topic, which is that I came back, having taken some marketing courses, some sales courses, and approached Randy about being part of the sales team, or at least being maybe the sales person.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this was the beginning of, I guess, I
Your
don't-
rehabilitation.
but
Louis.
absolutely my heroic re-entry into CKCU-FM. However, more importantly, I think we got a taste of how much of an interfering force CUSA could be, because there was a fellow named Peter Pivko who wanted another candidate, and Randy was on my side, and there was a bit of a loggerheads. And I remember Randy sort of coming in and saying, I got some good news and I've got some bad news. And the good news is we're going to hire you as the salesperson. The bad news is we're going to hire the other guy too. So you're actually going to...
Yes.
But in actual fact, I ran that department.
But
basically.
but this was a significant change, because this was the creation of a new department or part of CKCU that we'd never had any. We were non-commercial in so many ways, and it created a new dynamic in the station that not everybody was comfortable with.
Well, there were some voices in the hallways that wondered if we were,
Selling
whether
our
we
soul.
were flouting the CRTC. And,
David Mowbray?
But there were also people who were worried about what sales would do, the purists.
yes, I
There's
think
always
so.
that conflict, and there has been through my career
Yeah.
with commercial interest versus sort of the creative interest, and that goes on in ad agencies all the time. and it certainly goes on within radio stations. And usually, quite frankly, the sales side
Sales
wins.
always wins.
Yeah, exactly. And that was not the case. And that was one of the reasons why Randy wanted me, because I was uniquely sensitized to that conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah.